What's up, guys? We're live, back for live stream number 2. Hopefully this one goes a lot smoother than the last one. Last one was pretty rough. What we're going to talk about today, for those of you watching the replay, we'll just dive right into the topic list. I'm going to talk about learning Swift and kind of being patient about it and how it's like a super long journey. You just aren't going to learn it right away. Going to talk about that. That's based on an email I got from a subscriber who's kind of discouraged that he wasn't learning it quick enough. So I'm going to elaborate on my answer to him because I thought it was a pretty good analogy that I came up with. Going to give a quick update on my job hunt and how that's going. And then just a quick channel update. As you may know, the channel has grown quite significantly in the past 7 days. So I'm going to talk about that for a little bit as well. Going to do a quick recap of Planet of the Apps, the Apple Music show about app development. Just a real quick 30-second recap. I'll probably keep doing that each week. And then finally, just some Q&A. So if you want to line up some questions, I'll answer them at the end once I kind of get through all the topics. But let's go ahead and kick it off real quick with the learning iOS. Like I said, and just Swift development. I got an email. The guy was quite discouraged. He felt like he wasn't learning Swift quick enough and picking it up fast enough, which I thought, is a pretty common feeling because I felt the same way when I was first learning. I was very discouraged when I was at my boot camp. For those of you who don't know, I did an iOS development boot camp. That's kind of how I got my career started. And about 2 weeks into the boot camp, all the other students, because they had computer science degrees, they were coming from a previous language. I was starting from scratch. They were just flying by me. And I've always considered myself a pretty smart guy. So I've never been in that situation where I was like the dumbest kid in the class, and that's kind of how I felt. So I was very discouraged early in my iOS career. So I want to kind of elaborate on that and say that it is just a long process. It's a grind. It takes time. It will get better. I came up with a cool visual analogy that I told the guy. If you're familiar with video games or role-playing games or any game that you have to power up a character, whether it's Madden and their player attributes, anything like that, it's kind of like that with your iOS career. I came up with a simple rudimentary drawing that I'm going to show you guys. I'll probably make this an actual video with better visuals, but for now, we'll go with these rudimentary drawings. So here's you. Make sure you guys can see it. Here's you, iOS developer. All those red bars are like map kit, auto layout, optionals, core data, delegates. Pick any iOS development topic you want, and then it's on a 0 to 100. So this is kind of representative of somebody that's been doing it for 7 to 10 years. This is a very experienced developer. As you can see, they have many attributes that are almost to 100, and they know a lot about pretty much everything. This is where I consider me to be, roughly, right here. Again, for those that don't know, I'm about 2 years into my career professionally. So that's where I think I'm at. Everything's about 30 to 40%. I'm confident in my knowledge. I know a lot, but at the same time, I also know that there's so much further to go. I have so much to learn. I still feel like a baby, even though I've been doing it professionally for 2 years. And then this is where I think he was, and maybe some of you guys might be, which don't get discouraged. Basically everything at 5 to 10% or lower. And again, I apologize to the rudimentary drawings. I'll make better visuals for my actual video. But the point is, to get from here of being like nothing to, like I said, this guy, that's 7 to 10 years of professional development. So I just want to preach patience, stick with it. Those bars, those theoretical bars, every time you struggle for 2 hours on auto layout or some bug, or you're struggling with MapKit, you can't quite get it to work, you're building those bars up to 100, and it is going to take years. So that's what I want to talk about. I wanted to preach patience when you're learning iOS development. It's a grind. It's a journey. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. Hopefully you find a good community of people that you can kind of relate to and talk to. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, here on the comments, ask for help. We'll get you over those roadblocks, because a lot of times people hit a roadblock and they don't want to fight through it, and then they say, screw it, I'm just not going to learn Swift. I hope he's not watching, but one of my very first subscribers, obviously I had 3 subscribers at the time, so I talked to him a lot, and he was just starting out learning Swift, just bought a MacBook and everything, and then 2 days later he's like, nah, I'm not learning Swift, I'm going to learn web development. So he gave up that quick. So I know everybody here has probably run into some struggles. So like I said, power through the roadblock. That's the beauty of this profession. If you don't like that aspect of it, where you have to hit a challenge and fight through it, you're probably in the wrong profession, because you're going to hit that every day. Even people that have been developing for 5 to 7 years, run into that roadblock every day. They're stuck on a bug for 3 days and they finally get through it. So if that discourages you and you don't actually enjoy that feeling of when you finally get something to work, just that euphoric feeling, if you don't enjoy that, you're probably in the wrong profession. But yeah, moral of the story, be patient. Learning Swift in development is a long journey. It's going to last your whole career. Don't get discouraged early on. Got a question from Sean Cotton. Says, what did you do after boot camp to increase your iOS development knowledge? Honestly, I got my first job right out of the boot camp, and it was about a month out of the boot camp, and it was basically just being thrown in the deep end and learning how to swim. The job I got was an iOS team of 2, and we were both fairly junior, so we didn't have like a senior guy saying, hey, do this, do this. It was very much on the job training and learning on the job, and we were building the app like from scratch to launch, so I got to like build everything, and it was quite a learning experience. But I don't recommend that path. For you that are just getting like your first iOS development job, I would say it's paramount to make sure you're with somebody that's more senior and has experience. That will help you grow so much quicker. Whereas, like I said, with me and this other guy, I was kind of the blind leading the blind a lot, and I felt like I would have learned so much faster had I had that senior guy like pointing me in the right direction. But that being said, it was still a good experience because, I had to fend for myself. I had to figure out, if I wanted to build something, I had to figure it out. I mean, it took a long time, but so yeah, it was really just on the job training and just nonstop learning. I've said this in other videos, just exposing yourself nonstop, whether that's podcast, subscribing to the ton of iOS newsletters that are out there, watching WWDC videos. I mean, if there's 120 something sessions out there right now, you guys should be, I'm not saying to watch all of them, but there are definitely a handful of really like pertinent ones that everyone should watch. So yeah, thanks for the question, Sean. Next up, I want to give a quick update on my job hunt. For those of you who saw my latest vlog, this past Friday, so 2 days ago, I had my interview. For those that don't know, I am leaving full-time contracting to go back into the full-time, office gig. The place I'm applying to is an actual development agency, so it's kind of like contracting where I'm going to bounce around from project to project. I'm not just going to be working on one app for 3 years, at least that's not the typical way it goes. So I will still get that variety I get in contracting. But it'll just be a full-time job, benefits, all the security and stuff that I mentioned in my previous vlog about why I want to get back into full-time work. But anyway, the interview was Friday. I find out on Tuesday the results, so I'm kind of just chilling, trying not to think about it for the next couple days. If I get bad news on Tuesday, then I'm gonna have to go all in crazy, applying to places and searching for places. I really don't want to do that. That's for those that have done that and applied to 50 places. It's such a headache, such a hassle, and takes up so much time. So I'm hoping that this job just happens and then I'll be good to go. Don't worry, YouTube's not going anywhere. Even if I do get a full-time job, I'll still pump out at least 3 videos a week. But I think right now I'm averaging about 4 to 5 videos a week, so it might die down a little, down to 3, but definitely not going anywhere. Still gonna pump out some tutorials. Speaking of the channel, like I mentioned earlier, if you noticed, last week's horrible live stream, hope this one's quality is a lot better. Last week I had 500 subscribers, so 7 days ago, and then today I'm pushing 1,000. So it took me 3 months to get to the first 500, and then 7 days to get the next 500, which is crazy. So thank you guys if you're a new subscriber. Nina, I'll get to your question in a second. So thank you if you're a new subscriber. I appreciate it. It's been crazy growth over the past week. I attribute that to my WWDC videos, the What's New in Swift 4. It's probably what most of you came here from. What's New in Xcode, the ARKit tutorial. All of those are ranking crazy high in YouTube. If you go into incognito mode, which Chrome doesn't know your preferences or whatever, in YouTube and just type Swift 4, I'm the #1 result in all of YouTube for Swift 4. So that is pretty cool. I'm thinking I'm #3 for Xcode 9, and then also #1 for iOS interview questions and answers. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. So I'm not going to bore you guys with my YouTube stats, but long story short, I've seen incredible growth. Scam, I'll get to that too. So keep asking questions. I'll scroll back up through the chat and answer them when I finish this thought here. I just wanted to thank you guys for the subscriptions. It's been crazy growth over the past week, and more videos to come. All right, let me get back to some of these questions here. All right, learning Swift. Do you recommend tutorials that make apps and learn on the go, or do you recommend structure-based tutorials? They're both. I mean, they're both okay. I hate to give I feel like that's a cop-out answer, but I feel like you can't really go wrong with both. I would do both. Just the more, I keep preaching it, just keep immersing yourself. Just do everything. I know a lot of people don't have time. Maybe you're doing this on the side of a part-time job and you're trying to switch careers, or maybe you have kids. I understand not everybody has all the time, but just the more you do, it sounds too easy, but just the more you do, the easier things become. And like I said, it just clicks over time, just repetition. So that's what I would recommend there. Sorry, just reading some question. Yes, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Ataken. Oops, sorry. Doing this on my phone is pretty rough. So Anakin asks, there isn't enough resources about Swift 4 yet. Is it logical to learn Swift 3? Yes, the Swift 3 to Swift 4 difference is very, very minimal. You're going to get just as much pretty much out of those Swift 3 tutorials, minor changes. So just as an example, when I updated from Swift 2 to Swift 3 on a lot of projects, that took a couple days to update. Updating from Swift 3 to Swift 4 on those projects took like an hour. Obviously, it's going to depend on your project, but the long story short is, it is not nearly as drastic of a change from Swift 3 to Swift 4. So yes, if all your tutorials are in Swift 3, you're going to be perfectly fine. Yes, Scamo said, were you wearing a Cleveland shirt in your last video? And now it's a Warrior shirt. Yeah, I haven't been able to wear that Cleveland shirt around San Francisco that often. But basically, I'm a huge NBA fan. I play basketball 5 days a week. I grew up on it. I just love the sport. So I have this type of shirt, you probably noticed in my videos, in like 20 of the teams. They're just really lightweight and light to play basketball in. So, and they're comfortable. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of a team. You'll see, I have tons of them. All right, going back to some more questions. When did you start learning Swift and why? All right, Noe, this is obviously a long story, and I plan on doing a video about it. I'll do a quick 20-second version. So I was working at a startup as growth and sales lead. It's a small 5-person startup. I became friends with our developers. I've always been a huge Apple fanboy, and this was right around the time Swift came out as well. So I started kind of talking to them and learning about coding and learning about their jobs. And then basically I just started coding on the side, doing tutorials here and there, and I just caught the bug. I fell in love with it, and that's all I wanted to do was code. So eventually I left that place, and like I said, Swift had just come out. So it was a good time to start. So I decided to do development full time. So that's kind of how I got my start, and did Ray Wonderlic tutorials, did a boot camp, and then off I was. Vanden wants to, he says he saw my struct versus class video and wants me to talk more about that. Vanden, let me email you about that, just because that's quite a long topic and there's other stuff I want to get to. I apologize for that, but if you want to reach out to me on Twitter at SeanA0400 or my email's on the YouTube page, shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer more in-depth questions about that. Arlson asks that I have a brand new MacBook. What do I think about it? Is it a great machine? Do you recommend the 13-inch model? I had the old 2015 13-inch, basically baseline MacBook. So it was basically, couldn't do much. That's why I upgraded to the high-end 15-inch, 2016 MacBook Pro. I wouldn't recommend it if you had a brand new 2015 15-inch that was decked out for development, like 16 gigs of RAM, fully decked out. I don't think the upgrade's worth it, but if you're coming from like a MacBook Air or just an old low-powered machine, I would definitely recommend upgrading. That's kind of what I came from. I came from basically a machine that would barely let me develop to a pretty powerful one. Could you maybe publish something somewhere about the structure versus class thing, since I would also like to receive the info. Yeah, sorry, this thing fades away too quickly. Greenstone Movies. I don't know if you've seen the video on classes versus structs, because I'm not sure what he wants to know more in depth about it. But yeah, maybe if more people want it, I'll go deeper into that topic. But check out that video, and maybe in your guys' email, and when you reach out to me, let me know specifically where to go deeper and what to talk about. Lars wants to know, what degrees does I have? I actually got my degrees in economics and finance. So a little more backstory. I originally moved out to San Francisco because I wanted to get involved in the angel investing, venture capital world, that whole world of investing in startups. So to start that career, I wanted to start working in startups. That's where I was in the sales thing. And then, like I just mentioned earlier, finding the development world kind of detoured me into that route, which I never thought I would do. But like I said, I just fell in love with it. So that's why my degrees are in economics and finance. And one day, my future retirement plans, I mentioned this in another blog, is I do want to be angel investing here in San Francisco in startups, but that's 20 years down the road. But I am super fascinated about that. Sean wants to know, have you worked on any Mac, Apple TV, or watch apps? Not Mac OS. I have done an Apple TV app, a very basic video streaming app. It was a contract. Basically, this company had a bunch of video tutorials on their website, and they wanted people to be able to watch it on Apple TV. It's actually super easy to do that. It took me maybe like a week. and it was very, very basic and very easy. Apple TV is nice. I like developing for that. I would like to do more. Just the opportunities haven't come my way, and I don't really have time for. I hate saying I don't have time, but I haven't been able to make my own side projects, Apple TV apps, but I would like to. And then Vanna said, is Twitter a good way to be in touch? Yes, I'm obsessed with Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. So if you DM me on Twitter or mention me on Twitter, I'll see it fairly rapidly. The only time there might be a delay in response is if I'm sleeping. I know you guys are from around the world, so I might not be awake. Or if I'm playing basketball. I usually play basketball for 3 to 4 hours at a time, so I'm obviously not on Twitter then. But aside from that, I'm checking Twitter all the time. I'm obsessed with it. So yeah, at SeanA0400 is the best way to get a hold of me. And then Arlison asks, is it hard to find freelance work in San Francisco? How you live only freelance a job? So I got lucky through my network and in my boot camp. They have like an alumni network of the boot camp, and somebody posted about a contracting gig. They were looking for somebody, and it was a company looking for it, not just a specific one project. So this company is a development agency that I'm working for now. I'm not working for them, but I work with them, I guess is the right way to say that. And so it's their job to go out and find all the projects, and I'm like their main iOS guy. So they just say, hey, Sean, we got this project that does X. All right, you're on it. It's going to last 2.5 months. Here you go. So that's how I get work from them. And in my last vlog, the reason I want to leave contracting is because it is hard to find freelance work. Not because there's a couple of factors you got to take into account. It's not just any work, right? You want to find a project that you're going to enjoy, that's right for you, that people are actually going to pay you. That's a huge problem. People, backing on pay or they lose money or something. So finding the right project in and of itself is hard to do. And then when you find that right project, actually interviewing it and getting accepted for that project is a whole nother step. So yeah, it is kind of hard to find projects, at least for me. Again, I've only been doing contracting 4 or 5 months. I don't want to act like I am a contracting professional, like I've been doing it for 10 years and I know everything. But just my experience with somebody with like 2 years professional experience trying to get jobs, it was hard. If you can find a company like I did, that they find all the projects and you just kind of like work with them, that's a good route to go in my opinion. What was the hardest thing you came across during your career as an iOS developer? That's hard to really pinpoint one thing, just because there is like so much. And really what I struggled with in the beginning was the general like programming concepts. I mean, even just super simple stuff like what is a parameter in the function thing? Because like I said, I came into my boot camp, literally no programming background, no nothing. I had just done a couple tutorials. So I literally knew nothing. So just picking all those up, like for loops, while loops, basic programming concepts, which I know doesn't really answer your question about iOS specific. But really what I struggled with in the beginning was just the basic programming concepts. And I shouldn't say struggled, I just had to learn them and it took time. But iOS stuff, nothing has been more difficult than like another thing. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were around when I talked about the learning and being patient. You just got to be patient. You're going to pick it up over time slowly, no matter how hard it is. Just keep doing it and keep working on it. Can you give us some tips / video on how you get your apps out to the people as a small developer? I currently have 3 apps on the App Store, and with one being semi-successful. So I don't know if I'm equipped to answer this question. I only have one personal app on the App Store, and it's an iMessage app. I'm getting ready to do a major 2.0 update to it, so I'm going to do like a vlog around it. But it's just an iMessage app, pretty simple. All the apps I've worked on have been like for companies that weren't like my apps, so I'm not really an independent app developer, so it's kind of hard for me to answer that question. Favorite NBA player? I'm a shooter, so anybody's a 3-point shooter. Obviously, Steph Curry's the easy one to go with. I love LeBron too. There's a lot of LeBron haters. Like I said, there's not too many people I don't like in the NBA. I'm just a huge fan. I respect, because I play all the time. I respect how athletic and awesome those guys are. It's just, yeah. All right. I'm really comfortable with backend. What would you recommend to develop UI skills to make apps look exciting? So what I feel like I have an eye for design. I check design websites all the time, whether that's Dribble. There's a Medium. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Medium, like the blog posting website. There's somebody on there called Muzli, M-U-Z-L-I. They make a lot of awesome design posts. Behance, I think they're trying to do a play on Beyonce, but Behance, that's another good one. I just go to a bunch of design websites, and the famous line is, great artists steal or whatever. So I just go look at those designs. I don't necessarily steal them, but I'm like, oh, that looks cool. I could probably tweak it in a little different way to match what I want to do. So that's what I do. I just go to a bunch of different websites and get inspiration from there. And usually it's like combining, one design with another design, elements of it. So that's what I do. Hello, Sean. In your opinion, what are the requirements for a junior developer job? MapKit, Core Data. So it's all that specific stuff like MapKit and Core Data. Like I've never used Core Data. I've only used MapKit in a take-home project. So specific things, yes, it's good to know generally. But my interview series, which I'm not done with, I think I have 5 or 6 videos out. I'm sure you guys have seen some of them. I'm working on to get that to be like 10 or 12 things that answers that question. What I think a junior iOS developer should know. Based on, those are questions that, like I said, I got asked in my round of interviews. So that's what people are looking for. I've never been asked about MapKit. People have asked about Core Data, but like once or twice, and it was very rare. So I would focus on the general iOS concepts rather than the specific frameworks, because Core Data has a bad rap. A lot of people hate using it. And then MapKit, if your app doesn't need a map, you're not going to use MapKit. So I would just focus on the core fundamentals. And like I said, my iOS interview series is going to focus all on that. What do you think of getting a job in SF as an outsider? Is remote working pretty common there? What's the average package for 2-year experience guy? I don't know what you mean by package. I can talk about my rate. My rate, it fluctuates a little bit, but I do $70 an hour for contracting. Excuse me. If it's a short contract that doesn't have a lot of stability, maybe I'll bump it up to 80. If it's a long-term contract where I know there's stability, it's 6-7 months, I know it's going to be around for a while, maybe I'll go down to 60, 65. But 70 is usually the starting point. And nobody's batted an eye when I said that number, so maybe I'm saying too low. Nobody's ever said, hey, can you do 50? They're always like, yeah, sure. So usually when somebody accepts your first offer, you're too low. But that's just kind of my experience. Been reading up on React Native. What's your opinion of React Native for building apps? I don't know anything about it. I haven't really been reading up on it. I fight anything that's not native. I'm a big believer in native app development. However, I do think React Native has its place. I asked this question when I was interviewing at Facebook, how much, because React Native is a Facebook open source thing. So I asked the question, how much React Native is in Facebook? And when I was actually interviewing at Instagram, and the Instagram engineer said that they use it for a few screens here and there, that are common between both Android and iOS. So I think the example they gave me was the settings screen, just some basic screens. So I think based on that answer, I think it has its place. I don't know if I believe in building an entire app around it, but again, it has its place. If you're a small startup that doesn't have the money to have Android developers and iOS developers, then yeah, maybe that is the right way to go. I believe in native development, but I do think there is a time and place for React Native. How challenging is to design a universal app, iPad and iPhone? Yes, it is challenging. Yes, so the projects I've been on, I focus a lot on UI and UX because I was a designer at my previous employer too. So yes, it is hard. Even not only the iPad and iPhone, just you don't really have to worry about the iPhone 4 anymore, but back then I did have to worry about it. So even just going from the 6 Plus or the 7 Plus to an iPhone 4, that iPhone 4 screen is so small, and just trying to make sure you get all the appropriate data on all the screen. Anyway, I could talk for a whole another half hour on that, but yes, it is hard. If you're struggling with it, don't feel bad. It's a pain. What do you find personal hardest in iOS dev? I personally find AV Foundation to be an absolute pain. I kind of answered this earlier. I don't really find anything hard. I just feel like I haven't put in the time to learn it yet. I feel like I can learn anything if I have put in the time and do it. And yes, you're right. At first, it's going to seem hard. There's going to be roadblocks. But the more you work with it. So to give an example, when I was making my U-React app, it dealt with the camera. I didn't know anything about AV capture sessions or AV Foundation, like you said. And I struggled with that app. But now that I've gotten through it and built it, I don't think it's that hard. So I just think anything that seems hard, it's just because you haven't put enough time into it yet. And that's not a knock on the person. That's just saying, just give it time. It'll be easier. Endemic Life, Dub Nation. Endemic, I kind of shouted you out in the beginning. I don't know if you were here. If you watch the replay, you'll know what I'm talking about. All love, though. No hard feelings. But glad to see you here. And I didn't bash you or anything like that. I don't know why I said no hard feelings. Do you think it's possible to find a job in SF and get an H1B Visa? I'm 19 in Poland, working as a developer for 1 year and really like SF stuff. So it's, and I've had this conversation, I think, in another email. It is hard for junior developers in San Francisco, and that's kind of what I'm running into, because there's a huge supply of junior developers, and all the companies here want medium level to senior developers, and that's kind of where I'm at. Having 2 years experience, I'm a little more than junior, but I'm not like senior or mid-level yet. So when I was going around to the Facebooks, the Airbnbs, the Lyfts, and trying to get that mid-level position, I was like really reaching. I wasn't quite there yet, but I was going for it. Obviously, it didn't work out for me, but so anyway, yeah. So there's finding a junior developer job, I would say, is hard, just because there's so many junior developers. You have to be outstanding. So yeah, it is difficult. Right. All right, guys. Just as a heads up, I think I'm gonna go 5 more minutes. Just because, long story short, my Wi-Fi sucks here. You would think downtown San Francisco Wi-Fi would be amazing, right? No. If your apartment building was built earlier than 1995, you have horrible internet. If it was built later than 1995, which if you think about it, for a building is not that old, 20 years, 30, whatever, a little over 20 years. Anyway, so I'm dealing with like DSL. So I'm on cellular, my cell service. So I'm just racking up my data plan right now. So I'm only going to go for a half hour. So 4 more minutes. If I don't get to your question, I'm sorry. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter, again, at SeanA0400, or my email's on the YouTube channel. But I'm going to go for about 4 more minutes. All right. Currently studying information technology, focusing on web development and apps. Which other major do you think would be able to fit in with IT? Was thinking about marketing. I think everybody should learn marketing, just because it helps to market yourself. I am going to do a video about having an online presence as a developer. I haven't really mentioned it much, but this YouTube channel has helped a ton for me, just my marketing. And that wasn't really the reason I set out to do it, but even in the interview that I just mentioned last Friday, or Friday, one of my interviewers was like, I watched all your YouTube videos. I don't even have to ask you any questions. So we didn't even talk about iOS questions because he watched my iOS interview series, and he's like, I know you know it, so let's talk about, this. We talked about structure stuff. So and the interview went very well because he had already seen it, and he was making jokes about my video, so I could tell he watched it. Like, if you see my iOS questions and answers video, I say that I never had a good answer for, what's your favorite Apple framework? And he actually asked me that question, like, with a smile. He knew he was messing with me. But so yeah, it is very important to have an online presence, which goes back to your question, marketing. Not just marketing like other people's products, marketing yourself is a huge thing. I just believe marketing is a good life skill to have, not necessarily a job skill. Thank It's Asked, glad you're here. Do you use Storyboard or code for designing? I'm team Storyboard, mainly because I grew up on Storyboard. I understand the downsides of it. Merge conflicts are a pain. It's hard to work with a team. I mean, I get it. I've felt the pain. I get it. I'm just team Storyboard. Main reason is because I hate looking at a huge file with so much code in it. And when you're doing auto layout in code, setting up all your views in code, it's just the file. And I know you can like break it out and stuff, but in general, I'm speaking very broad terms here. I just look at a file and it's just like defeating to look at a 1,000-line, file and try to figure out what's going on. So I think Storyboard is going to get better and better. It's obviously the direction Apple wants people to go. I understand there's downsides to it. I'm not saying they're perfect. And I do write a lot of views in code. Sometimes it calls for, or it's better to write the view in code than to do it in Storyboard. So I do that sometimes. But in general, team Storyboard. Sean Cotton says, is there oversaturation in coding because everybody wants to do it? Yeah, it's coming, right? Like, I think as long as you're smart, like, that coding or any kind of programming should be a basic learned skill all the way through school, right? Like, you shouldn't start doing computer science in college. Like, you should be teaching kids from the age of 3 till 10. And I think people are starting to do that, with Apple Swift Playground. So I think it's coming, but, we're talking like decades from now, in my opinion. I think if you're doing it now, you're probably fine, but it's not going to get any easier. It's only going to get worse as the years go on. Just my opinion. All right, Daniel said, make sure I didn't miss one. Daniel asked the question, is about universal apps, don't constraints completely fix the issue? Yes, but not if you want it to look good. Long story short, yes, you could design for the iPhone 4 and just have constraints, blow it up on an iPad to look fine, but now it's going to look huge and ridiculous on an iPad. You want your app to look native for whatever device it's on. So yes, you're right. You can make a functioning app with just the constraints and like what you said, and it'll be functional. It'll just look like crap and look like it wasn't native. It'll look like an iPhone app blown up on your iPad, and that's not what you want. You want it to look like it was made for iPad. So what are your thoughts on, make sure I didn't skip one. Yep. Okay. So what are your thoughts on being both iOS and Android developer? Personally, I don't feel like learning Android because I'm an Apple fan. I'm kind of in the same boat. Do you think it's enough to just know iOS? Obviously, if you know both, that's obviously better, right? If you can go to a company and say, yes, I can do both Android and iOS, that is better, hands down, no question. You're still perfectly fine if you're just iOS only. Like, it's not like you have to be both, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's better to have both and know how to do that. All right, Nina, thank you guys for showing up. Hit the half-hour mark. I didn't get to my Planet of the Apps recap. I'll hit that up next week. Glad you guys were here participating, asking questions. Last live stream was horrible. Didn't get any questions. It was bad. So I'll keep getting better each week. Again, live is a completely different beast than actually editing a video. Yep, we'll be back next week. Thanks for showing up, guys. See you.